ब्रह्मनाथ ओ शांति 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 स्वस्थ। Hello students, in the previous class we discussed about the cell mediated immunity, in which we discussed that in the case of the cell mediated immunity, the T lymphocytes plays the major role, okay, fighting against the pathogen, or simply we can say the foreign particles. In the cell mediated immunity, the T lymphocytes fights with the foreign particles, with the cancer cells, and also with the organ transplantation. Next, we discussed how the T lymphocytes are being produced. The immature lymphocytes from the bone marrow, some immature lymphocytes gets migrated into the thymus glands, where they get matured, and finally the T lymphocytes are formed, or we can say the thymus dependent cell or T cell or T cells are being formed. Further, we discussed that the T cells are of four types: helper T cell, the cytotoxic T cell, the suppressor T cell, and the memory T cell. The cytotoxic T cell, how it works? It secretes a secretion called perforin, which helps in making pore against the on the plasma membrane of the foreign particles, by which the water or the body fluids enters into the pathogen or foreign particles, and finally it bursts. Next, in the case of the we can say the helper T cell, it simply helps the B cells to produce the antibody, or it helps the cytotoxic T cell to for their proper functioning. Next, the suppressor T cell. What does the suppressor T cell does? As its name suggests, suppressor T cell helps in suppressing the overactivity of the immune system. And lastly, the memory T cell. What does it does? The memory T cell helps in reminding the antigen which is previously entered, and if it is entering another time, then that we can say the memory T cell will quickly show the response and fight against that particular pathogen, because that pathogen has entered also before. Okay, so this much we have discussed in your previous class. Today we will discuss our new topic, that is your active and passive immunity. We discussed that the acquired immunity, the organism develops the immunity after the birth. Acquired immunity. Innate means it is present since birth. Acquired means it develops after the birth. Acquired immunity is also further divided into two types. One is your active immunity, other one is your passive immunity. Okay. We can say the acquired immunity is divided into two types. One is your active immunity, and another one is your passive immunity. Okay. So first we'll discuss the active immunity. What is active immunity? In this type of immunity, our body's own immunity system gets activated. How? Means when a pathogen or foreign particles enters into our body, our body's own immune system gets activated, by which they produce a protein called antibody. Okay, this is the case of the active immunity. Means what? In this type of immunity, in this type of immunity, our body's own our body's own immune system gets activated and produces antibody. Okay. Next, the active immunity is also further divided into two types. One is your natural active immunity and other one is your, we can say, the artificial active immunity. Further, we can say the active immunity is divided into two types. One is your natural active immunity and second one is your artificial active immunity. Okay, so first we'll discuss the natural active immunity. Natural active immunity develops due to clinical and subclinical infection. Okay, means what? The active immunity, it is of two types, natural and the artificial. In case of the natural, what happens? The natural active immunity develops due to the clinical and subclinical infection. Means what? Clinical and subclinical means, clinical means if a disease occurs, okay, means, or we can say if a person is exposed to a particular disease and he or she show some noticeable signs and symptoms, okay, then it is called the clinical infection. Subclinical means if the person is being exposed to a particular disease and he or she is not showing any symptoms, then it is known as your subclinical infection. So the natural, we can say, the active immunity is the immunity which is developed due to the clinical or the non-clinical or the clinical or the subclinical infection. Second point is, under the natural active immunity means, suppose our body is being, we can say, infected by a particular disease, and for it we have produced antibody in our body. Common example, take your chicken pox. If you know, if one person is being infected or suffered by the chicken pox disease, so once he was infected by the chicken pox, then the antibodies are formed inside his body. So if next time that virus comes into his body, then the antibody or that pathogen which enters into our body, the antibody that are present in our body will neutralize that antigen. Okay, so if we can write our next point, if the person is being attacked previously by the chicken pox or the mumps, etc., then in that case also they will develop the natural active immunity. So if a person is previously attacked by the diseases like chickenpox, mumps, etc., then that person will develop natural active immunity. Okay, so what we discussed now, acquired immunity is divided into two types: the artificial acquired immunity the active immunity and the passive immunity. The active immunity means, what is your active immunity? Active immunity means it is the immunity which is developed in our body due to our own immune system. Okay, or we can say it is the type of immunity in which our body's own immune system develops the antibody or produces the antibody. Further, the active immunity is divided into two types. We can say the natural active immunity and the artificial active immunity. In the case of the natural active immunity, the immunity that is developed due to the clinical and the subclinical infection. And second point, in the case of the we can say the natural active immunity, in that case if a person is being previously attacked by a disease like chickenpox or mumps, etc., then in that case also that person will develop the natural active immunity. Okay, please note down. Now come to your artificial active immunity. Okay. Artificial active immunity means what? The artificial active immunity is being developed inside the body by the help of the various vaccine, or we can say it is induced by the vaccine. Means what? If, for example, a particular pathogen enters into our body, okay, and for that maybe our body is unable to create antibody for them. So in that case, what it does, the vaccines are being taken or induced to help in producing the antibody. Means when we will intake the various, we can say the vaccine, then the vaccine will help in forming or producing various antibody. Understood? What happens in the natural active immunity? In that case, due to the clinical or the subclinical infection, whenever the pathogen enters into our body, okay, in that case the natural active immunity develops. Or if a person is being attacked previously by some disease like the chickenpox, then the natural active immunity develops. But in the case of the artificial active immunity, vaccine we will take, and that vaccine will induce the vaccine will help in forming or producing the antibody which will fight against the particular pathogen. Okay, so your first point, artificial active immunity, it is the resistance induced by the vaccine. And for some common examples are your live, we can say, vaccine or the killed vaccine. Live vaccine is your BCG, or we can say the Bacille calmette urine vaccine, okay, for the tuberculosis or TB. Simply kill another vaccines are your killed tab, or we can say the typhoid, paratyphoid A and B, for the disease called typhoid, which is caused by the Salmonella typhi, you know already. Okay, so the vaccines can be used as the live vaccine or the killed vaccine, which we will study later, that what is the live vaccine and what are the killed vaccine. Okay, so the live vaccine are yours, such as your BCG, live BCG vaccine, okay, such as your the Bacille calmette urine vaccine for the tuberculosis, and the killed tab vaccine, or we can say the typhoid or paratyphoid A and B for the typhoid. Okay, next, there are also various viral vaccine, such as your live savin vaccine for the poliomyelitis, okay, and the MMR vaccine for various diseases such as your measles, mumps, rubella, etc. Okay, and lastly the killed viral vaccine, such as your Salk vaccine for the poliomyelitis and toxoids for the diphtheria and the tetanus. Okay, so these are your means what? These are your artificial active immunity. Means our body will develop immunity, will develop antibody, and that antibody will fight against the various pathogen or antigen. But our own immune system will not produce that antibody. It is induced by the vaccine. When vaccine enters into our body, it will help in developing or producing the antibody. Okay, so in this chapter you should always remember at least 1 to 2 examples or name of the vaccine, which is very important. Okay, so some common examples, please remember, there are various live vaccines such as BCG, kill, tab, or we can say typhoid, paratyphoid A and B, and there are various viral vaccine such as your live vaccine, such as your Sabin vaccine for the poliomyelitis, and the MMR vaccine for the measles, mumps, and the rubella. Okay, and there are various kill, Salk vaccine for the poliomyelitis, and toxoids for the diphtheria and the tetanus. Okay, please note down. Next we will discuss what is the passive immunity. So what is passive immunity? It is a type of immunity in which the antibodies are being transferred to an organism in a ready-made form. What happens in the active immunity? We produce the antibody. Maybe it can be our own immune system, or it may be induced by the vaccine. But in the case of the passive immunity, the antibody which will fight against the various pathogen is transferred to an organism in a ready-made form. Okay, means what? Means it can be of also two type. We can say the natural passive immunity and also the artificial passive immunity. So what happens in the natural passive immunity? Natural passive immunity means, suppose for your common example, in the case of the pregnant women, from the mother the antibody which is known as your IgG, immunoglobulin gamma, will cross the placenta barrier and it will reach to the fetus, or we can say the fetus gets the IgG antibody. So this is a common example of the natural passive immunity. What happens in the artificial passive immunity? Means in this case also, suppose a person is being infected by a pathogen, means a disease, or we can say a pathogen enters into the person's body, but he is unable to create the same for the antibody for that pathogen. What happens? Then what happens in another animal or another organism? That same pathogen will be introduced, by which that animal will form or produce the antibody against that pathogen, and by bleeding and from the serum we can find that antibody, and we can introduce that antibody into the infected person, so that that antibody can fight against the antigen. Okay, this is called your artificial passive immunity. So first of all we will write what is passive immunity. So passive immunity is, in this type of immunity, the antibodies are transferred, the antibodies are transferred from, or we can say transferred to an organism, okay, to an organism in ready-made form, ready-made form. Okay, further the passive immunity, it is divided into two types: the natural passive immunity and the active and the artificial passive immunity. The passive immunity is divided into two types. One is your natural passive immunity, other one is your artificial passive immunity. Natural passive immunity and other one is your artificial passive immunity. Okay, first we'll discuss the natural passive immunity. Natural passive immunity. Okay, so if we'll take the case of the natural passive immunity, from the mother the fetus gets the IgG antibody crossing the placenta barrier. Simply we can write from the mother fetus gets IgG antibody, okay, by crossing the placenta barrier. As we discussed, from the mother's milk a newborn baby gets IgA antibody. Okay, so this is your natural passive immunity. Okay, from the mother the fetus gets the IgG antibody by crossing the placenta barrier, and from the mother's milk a newborn baby gets the IgA antibody. Okay, so this is all about your passive immunity, in which the antibody is being transferred to an organism, okay, in a ready-made form. Maybe it is of two types. One is a natural passive immunity, other one is a artificial passive immunity. In the natural immunity, passive immunity, we discussed that from the mother the fetus gets the IgG antibody crossing the placenta barrier, and also from the mother's milk a newborn baby gets the antibody called the IgA in the ready-made form. So that is all about your natural passive immunity. Okay, please note down. Next come to your artificial passive immunity. What I said earlier means, during the natural passive immunity, the antibody is being in the ready-made form transferred to an organism. But in the case of this is natural and which is produced in a quite natural form. But artificial means we will induce to form the antibody that is required for us. Means if an antibody is required for a human being, or we can say for us, to fight against a particular pathogen. Okay, and that person is unable to form that antibody. So what we will do? That particular pathogen, we will artificially introduce an organism or an particular animal in which we can know that it can produce the antibody. Okay, and that when it or the animal will produce that particular antibody from the serum by the bleeding, we can carry out or we can take out the antibody and introduce into the recipient's body, by which that antibody will help in fighting against the particular pathogen. Okay, so we can say, first point, the artificial passive immunity, it is the resistance passively transferred to recipient by administration, or we can say applying of the antibodies. Okay, means one recipient will receive the antibody passively formed, means we can say the passively means when another organism's antibody will be formed, and from that organism we can say from the organism serum we will take out the antibody and will introduce into the recipient's body. Okay, common example is the serum contains antibodies. For example, common example is the serum contains antibodies, for example the anti-tetanus serum. Okay, for the against the tetanus toxoids, this antibody is your anti-tetanus serum, which is prepared in the horse. Where it is prepared? By the horse, means by the active immunization. Means what I said earlier, when to a horse, for example to animal, any antigen will be introduced. Here in the case of the we can say against the antibody for the tetanus, when the horse is being exposed to the tetanus toxoid, it will develop the antibody, that is your anti-tetanus serum, by the active immunization. What does mean by active immunization? Means it is quite natural. What we read by what is the active immunity? Means a body's own immune system will develop antibody. Okay, means for the tetanus toxoid, maybe a particular organism is unable to form the antibody, but in the case of the horse, it is able to produce the antibody, that is your anti-serum, we can say the anti-tetanus serum. Okay, so what is written? The serum contains antibody, or we can say for example anti-tetanus serum, which is prepared in the horse by the active immunization of the horse with the tetanus toxoid, and the bleeding then, and by bleeding then and separating the serum. Okay, in the horse, first the tetanus toxoid is being exposed, or we can say it is exposed, the horse is exposed to the tetanus toxoid, by which the serum will develop the antibody, that is your anti-tetanus serum, and by bleeding and separating the serum we can find this anti-tetanus serum and we will introduce into the recipient's body. Okay, so your common example are anti-tetanus serum for the tetanus, ADS mean anti-diphtheric serum, or we can say another also example anti-gas gangrene serum, for, or we can say it as a AGS. These are our common examples of the antibody under the artificial passive immunity. Okay, so artificial passive immunity we understood means in another organism an antibody is being formed, okay, and that ready-made antibody is being introduced into the recipient's body so that the antibody can fight against the pathogen which has entered into the organism's body. Okay, so this is all about artificial passive immunity. After this, it is also one important difference is there, which is in your exam also it may come, that write the difference between the active immunity and the passive immunity. Okay, some major important 4 to 5 short differences you can write, such as your common difference is in case of the artificial immunity, our body's own immune system produce the antibody, but in the case of the passive immunity, the antibodies are being transferred to the organisms in a ready-made form. In the active immunity, for the formation of the production of the antibody, it takes more time. But in the case of the passive immunity, as it takes the ready-made immunity, it takes less time. In the case of the we can say the active immunity, it is more effective, but in the case of the passive immunity, it is less effective. So in that manner, you can write important 4 to 5 points, okay, for your 3.5 marks difference between the active immunity and the passive immunity. Okay, so this is all about your artificial passive immunity. Okay, please note down. Next, come to your lymphoid organs. Our immune system have the various lymphoid organs where the maturation and the differentiation of the lymphocytes takes place. Immune system have lymphoid organs lymphoid organs where the maturation of lymphocytes takes place. Okay. Means we know that from the bone marrow the B lymphocytes are formed, from the we can say the thymus gland the T lymphocytes are formed. Okay, so these are various lymphoid organs from where the lymphocytes are being formed. We know that the lymphocytes from where it is from the pluripotent mesodermal stem cells we discussed. From that the immature lymphocytes are being formed, and after birth they will migrate to the bone marrow. Some lymphocytes will migrate into the thymus gland and then their maturation occur, and there the T lymphocytes are being formed, and some remain in the bone marrow where the B lymphocytes are being formed. Okay, some lymphocytes from the bone marrow migrate into the thymus gland where the T lymphocytes are being formed, and some remains in the bone marrow where the B lymphocytes or B cells are being formed. So these are your various lymphoid organs from where the lymphocytes are being formed, and also we know in the case of the immunity the lymphoid organs, or we can say the lymphocytes, plays the major role. Okay, so the immune system have the lymphoid organ where the maturation of the lymphocytes takes place. Okay, next point, lymphoid organs is divided into two types. One is your primary lymphoid organs, okay, and other one is your secondary lymphoid organs. Okay, under the primary lymphoid organs we can write the bone marrow, okay, the thymus gland. We know in the bone marrow the B cells are formed, and in the thymus gland the T cells are formed. Okay, next under the secondary lymphoid organs we can write the mucosa associated lymphoid tissue such as your malt, which is the, we can say it is aligned which is the internal lining of the we can say the urinary tract, okay, the digestive tract, the respiratory tract, okay, such as mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, okay, or you can also write malt, okay, then the spleen, then the tonsils, then the appendix, and also you can write the Peyer's patches. You know Peyer's patches in the small intestine, you read in the already in the first year, Peyer's patches of small intestine. Okay, so basically the lymphocytes are being formed from the primary organ, but also it are also formed from the, or maturation also takes in the secondary lymphoid organs. Okay, so lymphoid organs means what? It is the means the immunity system have various organs, or we can say lymphoid organs, in which the maturity of the lymphocytes takes place. The lymphoid organs are of two types. One is your primary lymphoid organs and also the secondary lymphoid organs. Primary lymphoid organs consist of, we can say, the bone marrow, in which the B cells or B lymphocytes are formed, and also in the thymus gland where the T cells or the T lymphocytes are being matured, or maturity of the T lymphocytes takes place. And also various secondary, we can say secondary, the lymphocytes lymphoid organs are also present, such as your mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, such as your malt, or we can say the tonsils, appendix, and the, we can say the Peyer's patches of small intestine, okay, spleen, okay. So these are your various secondary lymphoid organs, okay. So this is all about your lymphoid organs. Please note down. Next we'll come to the allergy. What is the allergy? When our body reacts to a foreign particle abnormally, or we can say when our body reacts abnormally to a foreign particle, simply that is called the allergy. Or also we can say allergy is the hypersensitivity of the immune system. Simply we can write, when our body reacts abnormally to the foreign particles, this allergy occurs. Okay. Next, also we can write that the allergy is the hypersensitivity of the immune system. Allergy is the hypersensitivity of our immune system. So, simply what is allergy means? This is not a new word for you. Allergy you should all know in a normal. Means hypersensitivity of our immune system means what? When a foreign particles or something, or we can say some foreign particles enters into our body, our immune system should have a sensitivity towards the foreign particles. But if it oversensitivity or it overactivates, or we can say it is hypersensitivity of the immune system takes place, then that is called allergy. Common example, when during so many people have an allergy to the dust. Okay, means while we can say while washing or cleaning the room, or we can say while cleaning the fan, or while cleaning the floor, some have a higher sensitivity to the dust. That is called allergy. All do not have the allergy problem of the dust, but some people have the allergy problem of the dust because they have the hypersensitivity to that particular foreign particle. So that is called the allergy. Or we can say that person react abnormally to that particular foreign particle. In some common examples are also there, means in some cases while applying some cosmetics item also they create a irritation, itching. Okay, means that is also a problem of the allergy. In some cases also, when a particular person eats some particular food, then also it creates some sort of, we can say, infection in their body. This is also a case of the allergy. Means any foreign particles that enters into one person's body and it reacts abnormally, or we can say the hypersensitivity of the immune system takes place, that is called allergy. And the agent for the allergy is called your allergen. Allergen is the agent for the allergy. Okay, its example can be of many type. It can be of food allergy, it can be of any drug allergy, it can be of the cosmetic allergy, it can be of dust allergy, okay, etc. Okay, and various symptoms are also seen. Means we can say headache or the nasal congestion during the dust particles. When if a particular person having, or we can say, allergy to the dust particle, nasal congestion occurs. Okay, or we can say in some cases itching occurs, headache occurs. So these are various symptoms of the allergy. Okay, so allergy is the when our body reacts abnormally to the foreign particle, allergy occurs. And also we can say allergy is the hypersensitivity of the immune system, and the agent which cause the allergy, it is nothing but your allergen cause the, or we can say it is the agent for the allergy. And examples can be of many types: food allergy, drug allergy, cosmetic allergy, or commonly the dust allergy. Okay, so this is all about your allergy. Please note down. Next we'll discuss the autoimmune disease. What happens in the autoimmune disease? See, whenever antigen enters into our body's immune system gets activated and it forms the various antibody and it neutralizes the antigen. But in some time our body's immune system gets overactivated, means as an optimum as it should be activated, it gets much notch higher activated from the optimum activation. That is known as your, we can say the overactivity of the immune system, in which our immune system gets give harm, or we can say harms our own body cells, our own body tissue. That is known as your autoimmune disorder, in which the overactivity of the immune system takes place. Okay, means what do you understand? Our own immunity will make harm of its own cell because due to the overactivity of the immune system. Okay, so autoimmune disease or disorder means in case of overactivity of the immune system, the body attacks and damages own tissue. There are various common examples such as your rheumatoid arthritis. Okay, means in the case of the rheumatoid arthritis, it is an autoimmune disorder in which our own body's immunity system gives, or we can say make harm of its own body tissue, or we can say own body joints. Okay, next the multiple sclerosis. This is we can say a brain disorder, or we can say it is a nervous system disorder. Next, the type 1 diabetes mellitus, in which there is no insulin is formed, or we can say very low amount of insulin is formed. Next, the Graves' disease, or we can say the Hashimoto's thyroiditis, in which it is a thyroid disorder. And lastly, the myasthenia gravis, in which it is a voluntary muscles disorder. Okay, so autoimmune disorder means it is a overactivity of the immune system in which our own body's immune system attacks, or we can say or damage the body's own tissue. And also there are various examples such as rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes mellitus, Graves' disease, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and the last one is your myasthenia gravis. Okay, please note down, this is all about your autoimmune disease. Please note down. Next, come to your immune deficiency disorder. It is a, we can say, immune deficiency disorder. It is a disease or disorder in which a person is unable to create or form the immunity system, or it is unable to form the antibody against the antigen. So, the immune deficiency disorder can be of two types: primary immune deficiency disorder and the secondary immune deficiency disorder. These are of two types. One is your primary immune deficiency disorder and secondary immune deficiency disorder. Okay, so what is primary and what is secondary? If the deficiency occurs, means if the immune deficiency disorder occurs due to the, we can say, the genetic abnormality, then it is your primary immune deficiency disorder. It is the deficiency due to the genetic abnormality. Okay, whereas in the secondary immune deficiency disorder, it is the deficiency occurred due to, we can say, the chemicals, toxins, infections, etc. Deficiency occurred due to the use of various, or we can say simply we can write due to the chemicals, toxins and infections, or we can write infections, etc. Okay. So there are various examples. In the case of the primary immune deficiency disorder, X-linked A gamma globulinemia, X-linked A gamma globulinemia. Okay. Next, SCID, severe combined immunodeficiency disorder, severe combined immunodeficiency disorder. Okay, and which is also written as SCID. Okay, and next is your common variable immune deficiency disorder, or we can write CVID. Okay. Now here it can be due to chemical, toxin, infection, etc., such as your radiations, chemotherapy, radiations, diabetes, malnutrition. Okay, and some common examples are multiple myeloma, cancer of plasma cell, then your AIDS, then your cancer of immune system, that is called a leukemia, cancer of immune system, that is the, we can also say, leukemia. Okay, so the immune deficiency disorder is divided into primary deficiency disorder and the secondary immune deficiency disorder. Okay, so primary deficiency means it is the deficiency due to the genetic abnormality, whereas we can say the secondary immune deficiency disorder is due to the deficiency occurred due to the various chemicals, toxins, infection, etc. Okay, under the, we can say, the primary immune deficiency disorder, example is your X-linked A gamma globulinemia. Okay, next is your SCID, or you can also write severe combined immune deficiency disorder, and the common variable immune deficiency disorder, that is your CVID. Okay, these are very important, both one is SCID or the CVID. Okay, always remember the full form: SCID, severe combined immune deficiency disorder; CVID, common variable immune deficiency disorder. Okay, next is your secondary immune deficiency disorder, in which the deficiency occurred due to the chemical, toxins or infection. It can be due to the radiation, chemotherapy, diabetes, malnutrition. Okay, and it can, the common examples are multiple myeloma, cancer of the plasma cells; AIDS, cancer of the immune system, which is also called the leukemia. Okay, so today we discussed clearly about the other, we can say, the various different types of the acquired immunity, which is also known as your active immunity and the passive immunity. Active immunity we discussed, it is the type of immunity in which the antibody is produced by our own immune system. Okay, it can be of also two types, natural and we can say the artificial. In the natural, our body immune system produce the own the antibody, and in the case of the artificial, vaccine is being introduced and it induces to produce the antibody. Further, in the passive immunity we discussed that it is a type of immunity in which the antibody is being transferred to an organism in a ready-made form. Maybe it is in the natural way or it can be also in the artificial way. Okay. Further, we discussed some three important some points between the difference between the active immunity and the passive immunity. Next, we discussed the autoimmune disorder. Okay, now autoimmune disorder, then we can say the immune deficiency disorder, then the lymphoid organs, means there are primary lymphoid organs and the secondary lymphoid organs which where the maturity of the lymphocytes takes place. Okay, and lastly we discuss the immune deficiency disorder, in which it is a deficiency of the immune system, or we can say it is the inability for the formation or the activation of the immune system of a particular person. It can be of two types, primary or secondary. Primary is due to the genetic abnormality. Secondary, the deficiency secondary immune deficiency disorder is due to the deficiency occurred due to the various chemicals, toxins and the infections. Okay, so today we discuss completely the active immunity and the passive immunity and some terms related, such as your autoimmune disorder, autoimmune system and the lymphoid organs, and lastly the immune deficiency disorder. So that's all for today. We will meet in our next class. Thank you.